Okay. All right. We're ready to begin. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'm Sue Swearingen. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Glenview-Glencoe, and as many of you know, that also includes Northbrook. Our program tonight discusses the important topic of preventing children from causing unintentional harm through access to unsecured guns. Sadly, regular occurrences of this kind remind us of the necessity for public awareness and instruction around this issue. For example, just 2 weeks ago here in the Chicago area, a 3-year-old fired a gun he found in the backseat of the car and accidentally killed his mother. This was just one of at least 43 unintentional shootings by children so far this year alone, resulting in 15 deaths and 29 injuries. This compares to 379 unintentional shootings last year, more than one a day, resulting in 154 deaths and 244 injuries, all of them preventable. Secure firearm storage can help prevent future tragedies like these and keep kids safe. Along with Moms Demand Action, People for a Safer Society, the National Gun Safety Consortium, and the League of Women Voters of Illinois, the Glenview-Glencoe League is proud to bring together tonight's panel of specialists who will discuss why secure firearm storage is an essential part of home safety, alternative methods of securing firearms, current and pending state and national legislation that addresses and encourages safe gun storage, and most importantly, what each of us can do to protect our children and make our communities safer. Before we get started, I have one announcement. Sergeant Joel Detlaff of the Glenview Police Department, who was on our schedule, is unfortunately unable to be with us tonight as originally planned. He is available for calls or emails if you wish to reach him through the police department to talk with him about Glenview's role with the National Gun Safety Consortium. Okay, let's quickly go over the usual Zoom housekeeping instructions. As you know, the program is being recorded. Please mute and keep your audio muted. The materials that we're going to be using tonight, they're very brief, but there are some references to different organizations and also some contact information. We will email those out to you after the end of the program. So you'll all have a copy of those for your reference if you want to use them. The chat has been disabled except for any questions you have for the panelists. So there's no ability to speak with one another, but if you do have questions or you want to make a comment, go ahead and put it in the chat. About 45 minutes in, about 7:45, we're going to turn it over. We're going to go through those questions and give our audience the ability to.
Marks a new step in the pandemic. The state will close down 12 mass vaccination and testing.
We'll have your questions asked at that point. Our question moderator this evening is Yvonne Smith. Yvonne is here representing the People for a Safer Society. And since this is Yvonne's only role tonight, we would like her to tell us a little bit about what People for a Safer Society does and what Yvonne's role is with that organization.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Yvonne Smith, and I am on the board of People for a Safer Society, which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are members of the Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Coalition. I joined this organization before I retired from teaching high school. And I found out at that point that a gun shop and range was going to open in Niles, about a mile away from Niles West High School and within feet of a therapeutic day school. I had to be part of this fight to prevent a business like this from opening up so close to school children. The gun shop never opened. Members of People for a Safer Society lobby in Springfield and with local and downstate legislators to pass bills aimed at reducing gun violence. We also educate the public about important bills coming before the legislature that we hope will keep all of us safe. We attend rallies. We are in marches that support groups like Moms Demand Action, March for Our Lives, Mothers Against Senseless Killing, and Mothers Against Community Gun Violence. When a bill is passed, we are often educating the public about how that bill applies to them, how they can use the measures in that bill, like the firearms restraining order. We're really happy to be part of this event this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. And we're really glad to have people for a safer society represented, and with you here specifically. Thank you. Back to the housekeeping. If there's a lot of people on screen, there may be as many as 35. If you know how to do it, you might want to change your view to speaker view, and that way you won't be as distracted by so many faces. And then you'll just see whoever's talking at the time. Just a suggestion if that's something you know how to do with Zoom. Okay, and with that, let's begin. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Valerie Krejci. Valerie is a member of the League of Women Voters of Evanston and its former president. She also served on the board of the League of Women Voters of Cook County and the board of the League of Women Voters of Illinois. Valerie?
Hi, good evening. I'm happy to be the moderator here and introduce the rest of the panelists and participate with this very splendid night. We're going to start with our panelist, Megan Kavarkis, who represents Moms Demand Action. And I'd like her to introduce herself, and then we'll deal with the other two panelists. Megan?
Good evening. Hi, my name is Megan Kavarkis. I am a Glenview resident. I have been a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for over 5 years now. I am the public education campaigns lead for Moms Demand Action. I got involved with moms because I was a special ed teacher on the day Sandy Hook happened. And I still remember getting the text message from my principal that day. I do come from a family of gun owners, so it is something I am familiar with. That being said, I do think it is important to advocate for safe storage. I have 3 small children, and so whether you are a gun owner or not a gun owner, I think it's very important just to advocate for safety, especially as a teacher. So the public education campaigns are very near and dear to my heart. So you'll hear me talk this evening about our Be Smart campaign, which works to prevent unintentional shootings and reduce teen suicide. I also work with our One Thing You Can Do campaign, which works to educate the public about the firearm restraining order. And that is what I do for the state of Illinois. So thank you so much for having me here this evening.
Thank you. Now let's hear from Margaret Sense. She represents the National Gun Safety Consortium. Margaret, your turn. Tell us about you.
Hi, my name is Margaret Sense. I've been living here in Glenview since 1995. My son graduated from Glenbrook South in 1997, and we have 2 other adult children who went to Catholic schools in the area. In my 40 years of parenting, yes, it never stops, there have been numerous occasions where our American gun culture has alarmed me. After Sandy Hook, I joined People for a Safer Society with Yvonne. And as she said, this is a local organization that works for sensible gun legislation here in Illinois. More recently, I became interested in the National Gun Safety Consortium through an interfaith group. I liked the consortium because of the practical and market-based approach they employed to keep kids safe. Their thrust is to press the armaments industry to bring to market safe gun devices by engaging the industry's best customers, municipalities and police departments, to test prototypes. At an April board meeting here in Glenview, I brought to the attention of President Jenny and the board the Gun Safety Consortium, and I invited them and the Glenview Chief of Police to discuss joining. Membership would have allowed the officers to test various biometric prototypes of gun locks and safe guns. While they did not choose to subscribe at this time, they did sign the request for proposals that the Gun Safety Consortium had published. And it is my hope that other parents will be inspired through this panel to approach their municipalities for proactive, preventive gun safety measures like Gun Safety Consortium membership.
Thank you. And finally, we'll hear from Jim McGrath, the gun violence prevention issues and advocacy specialist with the League of Women Voters of Illinois. Jim, please tell us about your work with the League and how it relates to safe gun storage, among other things.
Thank you, Valerie. Yeah, so I'm Jim McGrath. I live in Barrington, and it sounds like Sandy Hook was the catalyst for a lot of us getting involved with this. When I heard that, I decided I had to do something for kids. I looked around for organizations. I joined Moms Demand Action, and through that, I was invited to attend and join the Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Coalition. There, in a face-to-face, when we could have face-to-face meetings, I met somebody who was a member of the NWS OFA Gun Violence Prevention Team, who invited me to join that group, which I did. Then in 2018, after the Parkland shooting, I helped start a Moms Demand Action group right here in Barrington, which I'm still active in. And then in 2019, I became the gun violence prevention issue specialist for the Illinois League of Women Voters. I focus on gun legislation in Illinois, and I do educational presentations covering the many aspects of gun issues in Illinois and in the US. With the Illinois League of Women Voters, I have an email Google group that anyone can sign up for, which we will talk about how to do that at the end of this. But the point here is we are stronger together. We have to work together to get all this stuff done. I use that Google group to send information out about various gun issues and to advise people when we have to sign witness slips or file witness slips, I'm sorry. So thank you, Valerie.
Okay, thank you. Now you have met the panelists, and we're going to learn more about the need for safe gun storage. So we're going to start with Megan, and she's going to tell us about firearms in the home and why they're a concern. Megan?
Yes. So first, I'd like to start by saying this conversation is a conversation that requires everybody to be involved, whether they are gun owners or non-gun owners. But first and foremost, gun violence is the leading cause of death for children in America, and specifically in Illinois. So that right there is a startling fact. 4.6 million children live in homes with firearms that are loaded and unsecured. We do truly believe that the majority of gun owners are responsible gun owners. I will tell you, with family members that are gun owners, most gun owners either want to be responsible or are responsible. That being said, we want to reach out to those that are not being responsible. Over 75% of firearms used in youth suicide attempts and unintentional injuries are stored in the home of the victim. They have done studies where the majority of children who live in homes with firearms know where it's stored. And more importantly, 35% of those children have reported touching those firearms. 80% of school shooters have gotten their firearms from their own homes or the homes of their friends or relatives. They are not going into gun shops and purchasing their own firearms. We have laws that prevent that. You can't purchase a firearm in Illinois unless you're 21. So that's really an important fact, that they're able to access those firearms in their own home. 17% of high schoolers have indicated they have had suicidal thoughts within the past year. And I think that's just a really important statistic. And so what we want to do is normalize the conversation around firearm safety. Just like you would ask about pools or allergens or dogs, we want to normalize the conversation around safe storage to keep all kids safe. I know I have young kids, and relying on curious kids is not a method of safe storage. Hiding a gun is not safe storage. And it's an adult's responsibility to make sure that kids don't have access to firearms. Whether or not you choose to own one is everyone's right. That being said, it's always the adult's responsibility.
Very helpful, very helpful. You answered all the questions. So again, I'll just say, why is it a concern? Because they can have access. We worry about teen suicide. And the school shootings are part of this because they have access. And we also have to worry about how the guns are stored. All right, so now we're
Absolutely.
gonna, yeah.
And I'd be happy to elaborate more on teen suicide.
Okay.
To touch base on that, the firearms have a much higher fatality rate than any other means when it comes to suicide. It's been shown that when it comes to suicide, the average person only contemplates suicide for about 10 minutes. There is this myth that if someone is contemplating suicide, that they will find means to do it no matter what. And that's just simply not true. Research has shown that most people who attempt suicide once and survive do not go on to die by suicide. Gun deaths by suicide have a fatality rate of 90%, 90. Whereas other means of suicide, asphyxiation is approximately 60%, pills is 2%. So what it shows is that if you are able to get time and space for the person who is in a crisis and get them the help that they need, there is a much higher rate of survival. But unfortunately, if they do that with a firearm, they're almost guaranteed to not survive that attempt. And when you factor in the impulsivity of teenagers, emotions, and an unsecured firearm, it's almost always fatal. So making sure that a firearm is secured in the home, it's essential. 2/3 of all gun deaths in this country are suicide. 50% of all suicides are gun suicides. That's an alarming statistic. And so whether or not you're looking at unintentional shootings with children, like we saw in Dolton, there have been cases in Bensonville and around Illinois. If you're looking at teen suicide, school violence, you know, speaking of my own children, when you have intruder drills, that is a very reactive measure. But one of the best things you can do to prevent school violence is safely storing firearms. It's just an all around best safety practice.
So Megan, what would you say about storing them safely?
So the best means of safely storing a firearm is unloaded, safely stored with a trigger lock or a safe, and with the ammunition stored separately. Sometimes we hear people say, well, it's stored up high. That's not safely stored. I can tell you, you know, they also say my kids don't know where it is. That's not safe storage. I think all of us have celebrated holidays and hid presents or hid Halloween candy. My kids inevitably find both of those. So if you think that your kids won't find them, they do. And research has shown that, like we mentioned earlier. So it needs to be unloaded, stored separately from ammunition, and with a trigger lock, which I know many people don't love, or in a safe, or in the very least in a safe.
Okay, from some pretty scary numbers. I'm going to turn now to Margaret, and we're going to talk about safe storage as one way of preventing harm to those with unauthorized access to firearms. Let's hear more about how another effective idea, which is manufacturing firearms security devices that work and that people will actually use. So Margaret, tell us about the National Gun Safety Consortium and its work with biometric locks.
Thank you. And thank you, Megan and moms, for promoting safe storage of domestic guns with the available technology. This is such important work. In 2018, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health found that more than 50% of gun owners do not safely secure their guns. Why do they not safely secure their guns? Because if they have a trigger lock on them, for instance, or if they're in a safe, they are not readily accessible. But what about the 50% of responsible gun owners who do choose to secure their guns safely? They have to choose from products with real shortcomings. And those shortcomings are around accessibility and mobility. So let's take a look at what's out there. Can we see a picture of a trigger lock? Let's see, Susan's getting it for us. Move it along. There it is. Now there it is, the cable lock. And looks like what you put on your bicycle, right? And yes, just like the bicycle lock where your bike was stolen, this cable lock can be clipped. And then the other concern is, as you can see, a gun owner who would like to access his gun after doing the combination or putting in the numbers or using the key or whatever it is, the locking mechanism, he then has to jerry-rig the wire out of where it is. And all of this takes time, and that detracts from the accessibility of the weapon. And really, it's detrimental to a person's wanting to lock their gun if they can't feel like they can get at it quickly. So that's the issue. So the gold standard of gun safety storage is the safe. Hunters, you know, there's that one. Hunters have had secure built-in gun safes in their homes for years, and it works great for hunters because when it's hunting season, you unlock the safe, you take out your long gun, you use it for your hunting exercises, and then you put it back in the safe and you lock it up. But with handguns, as seen in this picture, you don't really need a great big gun safe, and they're expensive. This one is you know, at Walmart only $61.99, but you know, just like the gun is mobile, so is the safe. So if you are not home and the burglar comes, he will steal your entire safe, guns included. And if you keep this safe in your car, you know, so many people feel like they need to have their gun in their car, and then they forget to lock their car. You know, I was speaking to one of the Glenview police, and she said, if there's one thing, if you can impress upon people, lock your cars. I know we don't do it. We go to the grocery store, we're only going to be a minute, we don't lock our car. But if there's a gun in the car, that gun is easily stolen, safe or no safe, and it becomes a crime gun. And our kids are also vulnerable to gun fatalities from criminals that are using stolen guns. So there's that. So what we're looking for is a better, safer, more accessible, more mobile locking device. And that would be biometric locks. Do we have a picture of that one? Coming up here, there it is. You see the little green thing there? So if you touch your finger there, that lock will come away like a clamshell and your gun is available to you. So this particular gun, you can even like Google this, you know, it's called an Identilock. So I think they have a website for that, but it's one of the guns that the Gun Safety Consortium is currently testing with police forces. And our police force, the Glenview Police Force, who's working so hard to keep our kids and all of us safe, they offer free cable locks, but they know the shortcomings of these locks. Therefore, they signed the request for proposals circulated by the Gun Safety Consortium to solicit improved safety products like this biometric lock that you're looking at right here. So what is the Gun Safety Consortium and what is it not? First of all, the Gun Safety Consortium is a vehicle for municipalities and counties and states to use their combined purchasing power to advance gun safety in the United States. Their goal is to get people to consistently lock up their guns with locks that solve the two issues of access and mobility. And here's what it is not. It is not a lobbying group, no significant focus on legislation. Rather, it is strictly nonpartisan, non-ideological. The whole modus operandi is capitalism. Yes, supply and demand. Now, our good gun owners who would like to lock up their guns currently can only choose some not very effective methods. So to get better products on the market, we have to demonstrate that there is a demand for the product before the gun manufacturers will make the supply available, before they will bring to market these more improved biometric locks. So governments buy 40% of the guns in the United States, but they have not made full use of this market leverage to push the gun industry to improve products and practices. So in spring of 2020, they published a joint request for proposals soliciting bids from vendors of gun safety devices. And this is what Glenview signed, is this request for proposals. Municipalities from Connecticut to Colorado, from Milwaukee to Miami have signed and subscribed and are testing devices. Now, signing the RFP indicates that you're interested, but becoming a subscriber allows your municipality to give to your police force biometric locks, and soon we will have a gun also to offer them for testing. The police will then answer a questionnaire about them, give feedback, and then this information will be collected and used at gun safety and gun shows to elicit interest and drum up support for these biometric locks. So it's about cooperative purchasing, testing and evaluating by police, reporting to the public, and then going to the gun industry leaders and investors.
Are there any other police departments in Illinois that you know of that are working on this?
Oh, yes. Park Ridge is currently testing guns. I should have all the names of them for you, but I know that there are lots of them, not a million of them, but a lot of them that are doing it. And yeah. part of my hope tonight is that some of the people listening tonight, I know we have people from all the way from Colorado listening tonight. They can go to their own city fathers and mothers and police departments and ask them to join. The more municipalities that are participating, the louder the voice, the more expression of demand, yes, so that we will get the supply. So there's that.
Okay, well, that's really great. Thank you, Margaret. I want to give Jim some time now before we take our questions. Megan's talked to us about securing firearms and reducing harm to youth in the homes and in the community. And Margaret discussed different methods for securing them. Now we're going to hear from Jim McGrath, how current and pending legislation reinforces use of these methods. He has a lot to tell us too. Okay, Jim.
Okay, so let's get to the slide with the list of guns. Let's start with this slide. One of the bills that is unfortunately sidelined, but we'll talk about that in a minute, was Illinois has a current law requiring gun owners to store their guns securely, but it only applies if someone under the age of 14 may gain access to that. So that's where the current law is here. You can see this on the left here. There was a bill proposed by Kathy Willis to move that age up to under the age of 18. The bill actually, or the law actually refers to a minor, but then they redefine minor to be under the age of 14, where we all know a minor is somebody under the age of 18. So let me just give just a little warning here. What has happened, what happens in a election year, legislators are very afraid, let's use the term, to support any kind of gun legislation. So typically throughout every year, there is dozens, I want to say 60, 70, 80 bills proposed for various aspects of guns. I am tracking about a dozen of these. Most of the bills never get any progress at all. So let's go to the next slide. So This first bill here is Safe Gun Storage Campaign. What that is a bill to require this HB 4729 to require the Illinois Department of Public Health to implement a safe storage public awareness campaign. Now that has been passed in the House and it is in the Senate. But you can see it says subject to appropriation. There's another bill, 5086, which is below. That bill will provide the funding for this bill. And that bill will be heard in committee tomorrow morning. Earlier today, I sent out a request to everybody that's on my GVP Google group with the league. And by the way, you don't have to be a league member to be on this Google group. To file witness slips, the gun lobby is very proficient in filing witness slips. So when the committee gets a bill to consider, and there's a lot of proponents and there's a lot of opponents, if there's a lot of interest, it tends to get looked at. If there's a lot of objection, a lot of opponents, it will probably be put on the side and not looked at. But if there's a lot on both sides, or even just a lot of proponents, it will tend to get to the House floor. And if it gets to the House floor, we think we can get it passed. So this next bill, the 3144, as you can see, this is a good bill. What happens with a lot of people is gun owners, for whatever reason, they may claim that they lost a firearm. What may have happened is they may have sold it to somebody that shouldn't have it. But what this law would require is that if they claim that they lost it, they have to report it to law enforcement within 72 hours. Unfortunately, it has been re-referred to the Rules Committee, which the Rules Committee tends to be where bills go to die. This next bill is something that is, it started out to be a bill where we were going to have in the student handbook, the best way to get the parents is to go through the schools, is to put something in the student's handbook talking about safe gun storage. This bill has been changed to allowing school districts to have gun safety education as part of the school curriculum, which I will tell you the league does not support. And they may have safe gun storage as part of that curriculum. The next one here is to outlaw what's called ghost guns. People can buy parts to a gun and put them together and they get a totally functioning gun. This is becoming a huge problem. We have in Illinois something called the FOID card, which is the Firearms Owner's Identification. And in order to buy a gun or ammunition, you have to have a FOID card. But if you can go to the internet and buy gun parts or gun kit, you don't need a FOID card. You can just put the gun together. Unfortunately, again, you can see over here in the right-hand corner, or column, this is back in the Rules Committee. Cam Buckner, who is the proposer of this bill, has just this Monday proposed a new bill because he wants to get this going. He wants to get this out of Rules Committee. So there's a new bill. It's 5731. I'll be tracking that. And if you guys sign up for my Google group, if that comes to committee, I will let everybody know when we can sign witness slips. Private gun, this next one, again, referred to Rules Committee, re-referred to Rules Committee. This is saying private gun sellers have to supply a gun lock. Now, federally firearms licensee, which is a gun dealer, has to provide a gun lock with every gun that they sell. The problem is most gun, as Margaret and Megan have talked, the problem is a lot of people don't use those gun locks because they're the cable locks, so they don't like them. So, but this bill has been re-referred to Rules Committee again. So, and so this is the bill here that was talked about, the handbooks. Both of these bills, this bill and the one I talked about earlier, has been, they tend to rewrite bills after they're first out. This was the bill that is now looking for the gun education in schools. So if you go to the next page, there's just a couple of bills more that I want to talk about. The first one is a resolution, and this has been passed every year, especially supported by Moms Demand Action. Is the first weekend in June is called Gun Violence Awareness, and it's Gun Violence Awareness Day, Gun Violence Awareness Week. It's also called Wear Orange Day. Wear orange because the young lady who marched in the band for Obama's second inauguration was shot and killed just a couple of days after she returned from Washington, D.C. Her friends decided, because hunters wear orange, that they would protest and support her by wearing orange. So this has been picked up as something that we do every year. And so now Illinois is acknowledging this date, and this is a resolution that has been passed. The last bill that I want to talk about is something called Ethan's Law. This is in the US Congress. This is a bill that would require every state to, and every gun owner in every state, to securely store their gun. It was started in Connecticut. Ethan's song was at a friend's house. The friend had an unsecured firearm, which they were playing with. The gun went off, shot Ethan, and he died. His parents were so upset, they decided that they had to do something in Connecticut. They got Ethan's Law passed in Connecticut. Representative Delorio, who is a US congressperson, decided, I'm going to take this bill to the US Congress. If we can get this passed, which is something we need to do, we've almost got enough support in the House to call a vote for this. So if you're, there's a lot of representatives from Illinois have already signed on to this bill. There's just a few who have not. Call your representative, ask them to please sign on to Ethan's Law. It's HR 748. Unfortunately, it's been on hold since, you can see this date over here, March 22nd, 2021. So last year, it's been on hold for over a year. So this would help us a lot if we could get this bills like this passed. So I think that covers all the bills that I wanted to talk about, Valerie.
There's a lot there.
There's a lot there.
I don't know how you motivate people. I do those whatever, the easy
witness slips.
things. Yeah, they're easy to do. I do that all the time. All right, so now we've talked about gun safety. We're almost done here. A matter of prolonged effort here. We've talked about storage, making the guns themselves more secure, and penalties for non-compliance with gun safety laws. But we want to ask Megan, what other avenues are available to parents to protect their kids from unsecured firearms, for example? Does talking about gun safety with your kids and your neighbors make a difference?
It does. So the first recommendation I would say is to always ask about unsecured guns when going over to the homes of friends or relatives' homes. A lot of times I will say, when I give presentations, I give 15-minute presentations about Be Smart, and people will say, well, we don't own a gun. Well, you don't know about other people. That 4.6 million kids statistic is telling you that a lot of people own firearms. So I always tell people to ask, just curious, if you have any firearms, can you tell me if they're secured? And we always tell people to ask that way, because if you say, excuse me, do you have any guns? That immediately puts people on the defensive. There's a judgment value in that. And that's not the right way to kind of put people on the defensive right away in the conversation. One thing you can do is to offer information about your own home. I often do that when I set up play dates for my kids. I say things like, hey, so glad to have your child over. just wanted to let you know, we have a 70-pound dog. We do have a lot of sugar in our house, but if you have any specific food requests or any allergies, please let us know. We don't have any unsecured firearms. We live in a neighborhood that has a lot of lakes. So I always say we're not one of the houses on the lake. We don't have a pool. And if you have any other questions, please let me know. I often tell people if they've seen one of my presentations, blame it on me, blame it on their pediatrician. Say, hey, I just saw this presentation and I never thought to ask before, but do you have any unsecured firearms in your home? Or I will blame it on my kids and say, my kids, honestly, if they've met my kids, they know, but I say my kids get into everything. So I just need to ask, do you have any unsecured firearms in your home? So asking is the most important thing. And typically, if it's a responsible firearm owner, they are more than happy to tell you that their firearms are safely stored. I genuinely do ask my family if they safely store their firearms, and I usually get, oh, yes, of course, they're in the safe. Like they're locked up with the cable lock in the safe, like they're fine. So I can tell you, I don't only just walk the walk, I talk the talk as well. And it's just normalizing the conversation. Oftentimes I get people saying, I never thought to ask that question, but I really should. And it's like, yes, it's no different than asking any other safety question. So the more we have this conversation, the more normal it is.
And before we go to the questions, we want to ask you too about this Be Smart campaign. Right?
Yes.
And isn't there a slide on this? Did I miss something? Anyway, that's your thing.
Yes. So Be Smart for Kids. We have a website. It is www.besmartforkids.org. It stands for Secure All Guns in Your Homes and Vehicles, model responsible behavior around guns, which includes having age-appropriate conversations with your kids. So I always tell my kids, guns are not toys. If you find a firearm, please make sure, go tell an adult, because you can't tell. Many firearms actually look like toys. I have an older stepdaughter, and I used to tell her if there's ever a gun at a party, which you never know, but kids can pull out guns at parties, make sure you text me right away. The A stands for ask about the presence of unsecured guns at other people's homes, recognize the role of guns in suicide, and tell your peers to be smart. Share this message with others. And I tell firearm owners, even if they are responsible, they don't know that everyone else is. So to make sure that they talk to other firearm owners about this important conversation. And this is just a really simple acronym and framework to normalize the conversations and take really simple, easy actions to prevent child gun deaths and injuries when it comes to firearms. You can check out our website. We have easy handouts that you can print, including ways to ask about firearms. We have handouts on firearms and suicide. We have a really great video. So I encourage everyone to check out the website if you get a chance.
Okay, I want to end the panelist part of this, but that doesn't mean you're done talking. We're going to switch to Yvonne, and hopefully we have some questions that came into the chat that she has put together, and it's going to be her job now to ask those questions.
Okay, there's one question that's here. If Ethan's law is passed, which is a federal law, does that mean that we won't have similar bills to pass in various states?
So I'll take that. That's exactly what it means. That's exactly what it means. But as you can see, Ethan's law has been sitting for over a year. It's a lot harder to get things done in Washington, D.C. Much easier to get things done down in Springfield. We may have to wait till next year for a lot of these because this is an election year, but we don't give up. We will bring these things back next year.
Okay, our next question. The statistics are disturbing. How can we directly help educate others? What do you think about having the village share the statistics in a series of vignettes in a weekly e-blast? And this person may be talking about the village of Glenview.
I would say that would be amazing. I would say they would need to hear from their constituents. I would say Personally, I've pounded the pavement a little bit, working with the villages of Northbrook and Glenview. And I will tell you that oftentimes I feel like sometimes I'm a lone voice. And they probably think that they're hearing from just me. So if anybody can tell them that this is something that they want to hear, I think it's really important. I think that the villages, to be honest with you, don't think that this is an issue in our town. And I'm going to be honest with you, having done these presentations, I do presentations. I have many volunteers around here who also give presentations as well. We do presentations that list a lot of the statistics that I listed in about a 20-25 minute presentation that goes over each of those letters and the acronym in depth. But what I've kind of been told is this is not really an issue around here. The Glenview Police Department was amazing and said that I'll be able to work with them for National Night Out coming up this year. And the Northbrook Police Department finally let me go to National Night Out 1 year before the pandemic, but it took me a couple of years emailing to get in there. So if they hear from people in the village that this is something they think is an issue, then I think it'll be much easier for us to get in there and hear from them. June would be an awesome time to do that. It's Gun Violence Awareness Month, like Jim mentioned. I used to be the state wear orange lead. I am not this year. I have a lot going on. There's Child Safety Awareness Month. There's a bunch of times that we could get in. So if anybody emails the village and it's like, hey, I saw this panel, and it would be great if you guys shared this information widely, that would be fantastic.
For Jim, what are the arguments against passing some of the bills that you've talked about this evening?
Oh, there's so many different bills. So like I said, a lot of it is just a reluctance to even act on it because it's an election year. So if we get just this educational bill that will support the Illinois Department of Public Health on an awareness campaign, if we get that passed, I think we'll be as successful this year as we could possibly be. Last year, if you remember, well, a couple of years ago, the shooting at the Henry Pratt Manufacturing Company in Aurora, the shooter there was a convicted felon in another state, but he was able to come to Illinois because Illinois, to get a FOID card, all you do is fill out an application, send in your $10, and you get a FOID card. So he got his FOID card. He went out and bought a weapon. He then applied for a concealed carry, and concealed carry permit requires you to submit fingerprints. His FOID card was revoked at that point because they found out he was a convicted felon. The problem was, all we required at that time was for the state police to write a letter to the recipient saying, please turn in your FOID card and your firearms. And that's the end of it. Well, he didn't do that, obviously. What we tried to do and what we did last year, what we wanted to do is get a FOID card requirement to have fingerprinting on it. That bill was not passed. A similar bill was that eliminated the requirement for fingerprinting, but you could submit your fingerprints and you get like a buy for your next FOID card. But what we were able to accomplish is every gun sale in Illinois, whether it's private, at a gun show, otherwise, now requires a background check. Private sales, until that bill was passed, did not require background checks. So we tried for 2 years to get that passed. The gun dealer, what we originally called the gun dealer licensing program, which was started by Don Harmon, who's a senator from Oak Park. He worked for, I think it was 15 years to get that bill passed. And we finally got it passed. It was the first bill that JB signed 2 days after he was inaugurated. Up until that time, Illinois was not allowed to regulate any of the gun stores or gun sellers in Illinois. So when we come up with an objection, we may have an objection it doesn't mean we're done. We will figure out a way to work that and continue to work it. Like I said, I talked to Ram Villalam, who was supporting that the original requirement for the FOID card and the fingerprints. He just said basically, Jim, it's an election year. It's going to go on hold. He's going to bring it back up next year. So stay tuned. We're going to bring that back.
So I don't remember whether or not we talked about information during the purchase of a firearm. So are companies or dealers that sell guns required to give people information about safe storage at the time of sale? Jim, can you answer that? Do you know?
A gun dealer, they're required to give them a gun lock. Okay, they are also required to have available safe storage, like a safe and stuff like that, and tell the buyer about that. But they're not required to buy it. So they're just required to have them available.
Okay, okay. Megan, a question for you. Would it be effective to go directly to schools to talk about this gun safety issue that you have presented to us tonight?
Yes, it would be. I will tell you, it is very hard to get into schools because they feel like this is a political issue and they don't want to touch it. When in fact, it's not a political issue, it's bipartisan, it is just a safety issue. And in fact, it would help schools. It would help them with their safety issue. It's preventative safety for all schools. If we could get schools to issue resolutions, honestly, Batavia and St. Charles and other districts around Illinois have had a lot of success in passing resolutions to distribute safe storage materials. Whether schools would put it in their handbooks, whether they would put it in their virtual backpacks, whether they would just send it home, do presentations as part of their parent education series. Yes, it would be amazing if schools would be more willing to do it. We've tried to work with some of the mental health agencies around here that are working so hard to prevent teen suicide. And they're very receptive to our information. That being said, many of the schools, I've actually approached some of the districts who will remain nameless in our communities, and they've said, this is not a problem for us. Like, no, thank you, but no, thank you. We do not have any of the issues that you have mentioned, and so we do not need your information. So if anybody could talk to their schools and say, you know, this is something that I actually think is pertinent, and it's pertinent to all kids, that would be amazing. I will have my email address up because I do pound the pavement and reach out to school districts on a fairly regular basis. And as Jim will tell you, we don't give up. I get a lot of no's before I get a yes, and I'm okay with that. I'm used to rejection. But that being said, a lot of the school districts simply say, thanks, but no thanks. This is not an issue that we need to touch.
One last question before we end tonight. What do you think about restricting concealed carry as a means for protecting citizens? Jim, any comments on that?
Oh, I would love to be able to do that. There's another bill that we didn't talk about tonight regarding concealed carry, and it's basically prohibiting somebody from carrying a concealed weapon almost anywhere in the state. I would love to see that pass. I don't think it stands a chance, but as you can see, the shootings that happened in Oak Brook recently, that just happened at the fashion mall by O'Hare in Rosemont. Concealed carry, that's a problem for everybody. And you know, I want to add one more thing though about schools. Every year, the group called the Illinois Association of School Boards has a meeting in November, and they have resolutions that school districts around the state can propose. For the last 4 years, there's been a resolution to allow schools to have their teachers carry firearms in the schools. There is a law that you cannot have a firearm on schools or anywhere near a school. We have had to defeat that the last 4 years. But what it takes is when those come up again, if you're part of my Google group, and I'm sure Moms of Men Action will do the same thing. We go talk to school boards, go there when they're having a meeting, and in public comment, say you want them to vote against this resolution. So, I mean, it's things like that for, you can work through the school board for things like this. It's as Megan indicated, schools are very hard to get to talk to directly. You may be able to talk to the PTA, which is maybe another route.
And if I can jump in there, Be Smart will be at the PTO Expo this year on April 19th in Oak Brook Terrace. That was one thing we were able to accomplish this year. So if you know any PTOs, that was one of the ways I was hopeful to get us into more schools. So please, if you know any schools, tell them to stop by the Be Smart table at the PTO Expo this year and pick up some Be Smart materials, because hopefully, since we have vendor status, that will give us a little more clout and a little more
Okay.
access to schools.
So this is how you all can make a difference. Our wind up, here's the pitch. In your home, safe storage, in other people's homes, make sure you check where your kids are going and who they're with, and ask those questions. And in your community, you work with the organizations. If you have an in with the school board or a PTA or another community organization, put this on their radar. I hate to think that there has to be some other crisis that we will not do anything about for something else to happen here. And schedule a Be Smart presentation. We're going to have on the next slide, or the slide after this, contact information. You keep informed, you get on these lists, and you'll find out how you can help make a difference here. Jim's going to talk about working with your legislators.
So, when you guys get this presentation, you'll have the list of bills. This session in Springfield is over April 8th. So we only have maybe one more week to work on these bills, but call your legislator, find out where they stand on these various bills, fill out the witness slips. Again, when I find out that a bill is going to be in committee, I send out an email to everybody that's on my Google group and ask them to fill out a witness slip. This last thing on Ethan's Law, because it is a national thing, is actually being promoted and supported by Newtown Action Alliance. And that's actually run by Sarah Kniznik. And she has typically a lunch and learn. I think it's every Monday. It might be every other Monday, but I can't recall. But it's these kind of things. You can never get enough information. That's why I follow all these different groups. Let's get down to this last one. This is for Megan. If you want to join your local, go ahead, Megan.
I was going to say, text join to 64433 to join your local Moms Demand Action group. We will have many events coming up. I can connect you with Be Smart trainings, things on FROs. We will have Wear Orange events in June. So if you are part of Glenview, Glencoe and Winnetka will have events coming up. So if you'd like to do more with that, please join us. And I'll pass it over to the League of Women Voters or Jim.
Yeah, and let me just say this. So, I mean, I've done Be Smart presentations. We've also had gun dealers show up thinking that they are going to sabotage our presentation. At the end of the presentation, they sit there and they go, "You guys are not what we thought you were. We agree with what you guys do." So don't think you're stepping on anybody's toes if you want to get this Be Smart presentation done. Gun dealers agree with it for the most part. And there'll be information on the next slide. You can send me an email if you want to join this Google group. So here in the second box on the middle line here, there's my email. If you want to join this gun violence Google group, just put in the subject GVP Google group so I can find it. And I will get you on this this Google group list as soon as I get that email, I'll add you to the list.
People for a Safer Society also sends out an email blast periodically to do some of the same things that Jim has talked about, signing up for sending out witness slips. So again, if you want to become part of that, peopleforasafersociety.com and get on our email blast list as well.
And if anyone wants to contact me, my email is really simple. It's just megandemands@gmail.com, or simply sign up at the bigger website, which is momsdemandaction.org.
Great. With that, I want to thank our panelists for sharing such excellent information with us. As audience, as you can tell, we've covered the full breadth of information, how to be safe in your homes, in your communities, how to be effective in through our legislators, how to stay informed, and to take some hope from the fact that our municipalities and the largest market or users of firearms, our municipalities and police forces are making a difference in being a collective market force for change with biometric locks. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our audience for joining us. We appreciate your interest in hearing more about this issue, and we encourage everybody to do what you can. Once again, we will email this information to all of you, and please spread the word and be sure to get in contact with our panelists if there's anything more that they can do to assist you with that. Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you all.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Are we going to do a quick evaluation?
Yeah, let's stay on.
Yes, we should stop the recording then.